Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 7, Episode 2, Shadows and Symbols. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we are awesome, we are a good time, and I think that you will enjoy our show as we look back at this great entry into the world of sci-fi that happened 30 some odd years ago. One of the few shows that didn't get a movie, which it should have gotten, but continues on in various comics, which I'm sad to say I have not read yet. I feel like I will eventually get to them when my hunger for all things Trek really hits a new high because there's no more new Trek out there, at least as of yet. So yes, we are talking about this second episode of the seventh season. Seventh season. We are finally in the seventh season doing this
Yep.
show. It's just amazing. Like I love the stick to itiveness that we had here to get through it all.
Yeah.
But before we dive in, of course, to the episode tonight, I'd like to, as always, catch up here a little bit. So, David, how has your week been?
Oh, man. Work was crazy in that it was like dead for, well, I guess, let me see. So it was the President's Day weekend. So the President's Day weekend itself was fine. Not great, like good, like okay. And then the days after the end of the holiday was over, the next couple days through the week were dead. And then Saturday rolls around and get us sale, and I have people in the store looking at product that would cost a pretty penny, but they're not pulling the trigger. I don't know. And then on the day I was off, I'm off on Tuesdays. The day I'm off, the guy who was covering my store did a $22,000 Tempur-Pedic sale. Like, oh my gosh! Like the one day I'm off this week is when it pops off. Apparently, the story is this woman came in. They had their house had burnt down, and so she has a giant insurance check to blow through. And apparently, it was like a cakewalk for the guy. Just rubs you. You're just like, oh my gosh! Just of course, the day I'm off is when that happens.
That is definitely a feeling I do not miss at all. Like just that constant worry that on the day that I'm not there, some Yahoo covering my store is gonna have this massive blow up day, and
Yeah. Well, that happened. I got a call from my coworker. Like he's the guy who's like been around for a long time, and he watches all the sales, and he calls me up on my day off and says, "Hey, do you know that your store just had a massive day?" I'm like, no, like I'm off. Like, what do I know about it? He's like, well, you might want to check on it. Like maybe that was your sale, your customer. But I heard the story later, and I was like, no, that's not my customer, which was annoying because I had a woman come in the store during the President's Day weekend, and she said she'd come back later that afternoon with her husband to buy something, like one of the Tempurs. I was like, okay, great. People say that all the time. So maybe it was her, but nope, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that to say, and then on Wednesday, our boss sent out this email about the exchanges. People don't like their mattress, so they want to try something else. I had the worst ratio in the company. He didn't call me out specifically, but if you just look at the numbers, mine was the worst. And I was like, God dang it! Like I had an exchange over the weekend. It was like I can't win for losing. And then the next day, I get a call. So Thursday, I get a call from not even my own customer for another guy. And this woman's like, the Tempur-Pedic I bought last week, totally different. Like it wasn't my customer. It was another guy who covered my store. He sold this lady a Tempur-Pedic. She and her husband. And she's like, yeah, my husband has dementia. And so I don't care about what my husband signed. Like, I want to return this mattress. I'm like, it's not my customer. I had just got this email from the boss saying like my ratio is terrible. And so I try and email, like the guy is off for 2 days, like who originally sold it to her, so he can't talk to the customer. I basically shoot it up to the boss, and he's like, why did you handle it the way you did? So I knew before I got the email back that my boss was gonna have something to say about what I said about what happened. Just like I can't win for losing, man. Anyway,
See,
that was work. I contemplated calling you on that last one, being like, Perry, I need to complain to someone and
you
have
should have. You
I
should have.
maybe I should have. I don't know. It's one of those things. Like I need to like think about it myself. I mean, it's fun to complain, but sometimes you really just gotta like dig down deep and figure out if you could have done a better job yourself. Anyway, thought about calling you, but other than that, had a fun week reading the D-Day book, which I mentioned last week. Finished it actually today because the last chapter was only about like 10 pages, and I hadn't got a chance to finish it last night. And it was it's a great book. I mean, it's again by Stephen Ambrose, who wrote the Band of Brothers book. He wrote Band of Brothers in 1992. Is that right? No, I think that might be wrong. Anyway, he wrote Band of Brothers sometime around writing D-Day. I forget how that went. I think he wrote Band of Brothers first, and then he wrote D-Day. And it's the book was 580 pages long, and it's only about a 24-hour day. I mean, the first couple chapters talk about the training and how they got to the day, but the day itself is just massive. And the majority of the book was focused on Omaha Beach because that's the beach that had all the worst casualties. The Germans just had everything zeroed in. They were just bombing the crap out of it. The other beaches were stressful, but it's interesting because Stephen Ambrose is an American author. He does give a lion's share of the storytelling to the American beaches, Utah and Omaha. The other three beaches only get one chapter each. But anyway, great book. If you ever want to read about D-Day, it was fun to read. He brings in a lot of personal anecdotes throughout while he's telling the story. So yeah, that was, I guess, that. I started watching Severance again because season 2 is out. Severance is fantastic. Partway through season 1 in my rewatch to get to season 2, and loving that. And yeah, I guess that's not much else to say. So, how about you? What's up with you?
Well, work was work. There's no need to go into great detail there, other than I enjoy my work, so that's it. I enjoy what I do. I'm in insurance underwriting, if you must know. So it may sound boring, but I actually enjoy the investigations things that we do. So that satisfies me. But what I've been doing, I've actually been kind of trying to get back into reading more. As I indicated last week, I had started on kind of a comparison read through of the Federalist Papers and the Constitution.
Oh, right, yeah.
Still working through that and enjoying it so far. I haven't found anything yet that kind of stands out to me as like, oh, this was an amazing point or anything like that. But I feel like it's maybe because of the way that I'm doing this, with like the way I'm kind of like reading sections of the Constitution and then that, so it might not, I'm not allowing the flow to really hit me just yet. So I'm anticipating a little bit more of that as it goes on, because I'm rapidly getting through the Constitution part because it's kind of fixed and
very bland.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and that's probably the best takeaway. And another reason why I think everybody should get a copy of the Constitution, because I think that we have it in our head, like I said before, everybody feels like instinctively they know it, but then when you are presented with the opportunity to actually read it, you feel like it's going to be this really heady document that is going to take you a lot to wrap your head around. And then we have constitutional scholars and constitutional lawyers and all these people they've built up whole doctrines and degrees around studying and interpreting the Constitution. So you feel like it's just, man, there's no way, but it's not like that at all. Like, you can read it and it's very straightforward. And I think that you can get the intent and the gist of what they're saying through it. I guess, like, I mean, if you ever really had to like argue anything, you're more arguing like points and decisions that were made after this document was ratified, not necessarily the document itself.
Right.
So that's where I feel like all that constitutional law stuff kind of gets in the way, because it's like there's all these other laws and statutes and codes and whatever else that branch off of this core document. So if you take the core document itself, you can get through it. Trying to get
Right.
to all other stuff, you're going to lose yourself. In addition to that, I have also been making my way, of course, through The Expanse, Tiamat's Wrath. I'm enjoying this book more and more. I
Good.
feel it.
Okay.
It hasn't quite got there yet, but I feel it coming. Like it's there's something in me. It's telling me this is the one that's going to give me all the protomolecule stuff that I haven't got before. And I just got into um, not season, um, uh, chapters 5 and 6, and there was a great lead up in these where they were discussing like the protomolecule and really the architects behind the protomolecule and what their intent was, and or what they're theorizing their intent was, and why the ring gates are kind of open to these particular 1300 systems, because space is vast and there's millions of systems, so why this 1300? And so
Right.
they're kind of laying the stuff out there while you're trying to figure it out. And so I'm really enjoying that. So there's that. So yeah, in addition to that and the Federalist Papers and all that, I've also picked up this book, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Ooh. Okay.
And
Nice. Nice.
I'm really looking forward to this one. I've not started it yet.
Right.
I feel like I'm a little too spread out, so I'm trying to like get through one and then I'll start this. But
Stoic philosophy. All right.
exactly,
Let's go.
I've always been a fan. I've always been a fan of Stoic philosophy, but it's on a very kind of like the broad strokes of it. And then I started looking into it, and this guy's kind of like seen as one of the founding fathers here, if not the founding father, depending on who you talk to. So
Roman emperor, founder of a philosophical movement.
Great guy, and for those
He's
of you
also
who,
the same one who dies.
I was going to say, for those of
Gladiator.
you who may know the name, but you're not really sure, Marcus Aurelius is the emperor who dies at the very beginning of the first Gladiator movie. He's killed by his son, Commodus. So there's that. And then the companion to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is this book. And so I've picked this up as well. Obviously, that's the Enchiridion, which I thought this was a fake book, to be honest, because I'd heard that name Enchiridion before, and it was in like a children's fairy tale or something, and so I thought it was just something that was made up. So imagine my surprise when I found out it was a whole legit book that is also like.
It sounds like one of the things that the Expanse, Caliban's War, whatever that thing is
the Enchiridion, right?
The Enchiridion Spire, or I don't know, something crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, again, imagine my surprise when I found this is actually a legitimate book. And so this guy was supposed to be a contemporary of Marcus Aurelius. He more flows a little bit like after Marcus dies, and so he's like kind of the next step in that Stoic philosophy. So I picked that up as well. Looking forward to going through both of these. I'm also thinking I'm going to do kind of a not necessarily a simultaneous read the way I'm doing the Constitution and the Federalist Papers, but more like when I get closer to the end of this one, start this one to see where the overlap is, because it's supposed to be pretty apparent there. So lots of reading to do here in the coming days, week, months, which I'm really looking forward to, because I did feel like for a while there I was severely lacking on the reading. Also, I finally watched The Mandalorian. I had watched a couple of episodes of the show when it first came out, but Star Trek is more my thing, not Star Wars, so it takes a little bit. And then, of course, with people always being like, "Oh, it's so good, you've got to watch it." Like, the more you advocate, the more I'm going to be like, "Nope, not gonna." So it took this long for me to finally sit down and watch all of it, and I enjoyed it, but it was a bit disjointed, because I then realized that there were several other shows that were made, like the story of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and then I think there's a third show where they all kind of like popcorn around. So I was looking it up, and it's like you can watch the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, then you have to watch the Boba Fett show, then you could watch season 3 of The Mandalorian, then you got to watch Ahsoka and something else.
Right.
So and like the actors and their storylines interweave. So the Mando shows up in Boba Fett and in Ahsoka and vice versa and all of this stuff. So it's important that you watch them all in order to get the full context of the show. Well, I didn't know that. I just watched 1 through 3 of the
Right.
seasons, and I was like, something's like you can tell. You can definitely tell something is missing. But other than that, I thought the show was actually really good. What's his name? The guy who plays the
Pedro Pascal.
Mandalorian. Yeah, that guy. He's got. I feel like he's got to be exhausted
He's
because
in
like he's in
everything.
everything, right?
I'm
He's just been
actually
in
I
everything.
at this point I'm annoyed. I don't want like they announced that he's in Fantastic Four, and I'm like against Fantastic Four now because I'm like I'm done with Pedro Pascal. He's been in everything. I'm done with him. Give
Right,
the
and
man a break.
right. It's like I don't think that he's a bad actor. I just feel sorry for him. So I'm like, and it's weird to feel sorry for a person who's making so much money and is so successful.
Right.
But like seriously, I'm like, aren't you tired?
Right.
Like, don't you want to sit down?
Yeah.
Because you are in everything. You're the Mandalorian. You're in The Last of Us. You're now in Fantastic Four. You were in Game of Thrones. You
Yes.
he did a couple other little like some movies and stuff
Movies.
as well. You know, it's just like, when do you take a break?
Yeah. You know, he
So
was in the Wonder Woman part, the second Wonder Woman movie. He was in Last of Us. He was in the Narcotics show. He's been in a bunch of movies.
he
And
was
like
in
I
one
don't,
of those Equalizer movies or
yeah,
whatever
Equalizer
with
2.
Denzel. You know,
Yeah. And I don't think him as an actor, but at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's oversaturated. He's overplayed his hand. He's in too much. And I also wanted a part of the reason the Fantastic Four thing for me is I wanted John Krasinski and Emily Blunt to be in the parts because they're already a married couple. They're great in the Quiet Place movies. They were perfect as the role. They even got John Krasinski to do the
in
second
that
Doctor
what
Strange.
if, yeah, in
Yeah.
that what if universe,
Yeah, but now they got Pedro Pascal and the blonde chick from the Mission Impossible movies. I don't even know her name, but they're going to do it. And I'm like, I mean, the Marvel movies have been so off the rail for so long, I don't even care anymore.
Well, yeah, that's all part of their their phases of storytelling, and now they're supposed to be entering into the fourth phase, I think.
I think they've
Or this.
officially said they've moved on to like season phase 5 or something, but there's no consistent storyline, so it doesn't even matter.
Mm.
Yeah.
I know that there were rumors. Don't know if this is true, but again, I know there were rumors that Jonathan Majors was going to be back playing his character Kang. But again, that was just rumors because apparently the case against him has now been dropped, dismissed, whatever you want to call that. The lady that was alleging he did whatever it was that she alleged that he did has apparently come forward and said, like, recanted basically. But I'm always leery of things like that because it's like, his career was effectively ruined by that. So even if you come back out, a year or two later and say, you recant, you made it up, you exaggerated, you lied, whatever, you still ruined, countless projects, contracts, everything that person had going at that time. And there's got to be some kind of, restitution for that. That's the same as like people who are accused of various other crimes, and it turns out later on that they were innocent the whole time. Never did. Like, how do you make up for stuff like that? So
I just looked him up. Apparently, he is actually doing a 52-week course on domestic violence. Like that was he was convicted, but of like something fairly minor, I guess you could say. If it's only a in-person domestic violence intervention program, doesn't look like he had to go to jail. But he's 35. He's not even a full year older than I am. I didn't realize that. I thought he was like 40.
Oh yeah.
No, he's my age. I can't believe it.
Still a young man. Still a young man.
It's crazy.
That's what's crazy with a lot of these stories when they come out. It's just like, how young some of these people are, and already saying things like, "Oh, your career is over. Your career is ruined." At 35, your acting career is over.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot to take in there. I don't know if he's coming back truly as Kang again. That was the rumor I heard. I mean, there's also some rumors in there that Michael B. Jordan's character Killmonger from the Black Panther movie was also going to be back in some other forms in some of these new Marvel projects. So, like, I mean, but he was killed. That character died in the movie. So, how they're going to bring them back, I don't know. So we'll see. And I'm just waiting to see how they explain Tony Stark is Dr. Von Doom, how they're going to work that one out. You know,
When they
so
made that announcement, I was like, I mean, I love Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, but he went out right. The character, they put the character to rest, and it's like, not only you bringing him back, but like it's like some sort of alternate role. Like,
yeah,
they're gonna have to turn him into some like evil version of
it's
Iron Man. Or
it's
something.
gonna
Like,
be it's gonna have to be some kind of weird Elseworlds alternate dimension something that, you know, and that will be also how they can bring Killmonger in, of course, but that's what it's going to turn into. And it's one of those situations where, like, I don't see how that's going to be a good movie because you're so distracted by them playing roles opposite of what you already know them intimately for, that, I mean, the storyline has got to be top tier just to even give it a hint of a chance. Right. So I'll be eager to see how they do that. Eager to see it, but will I rush to the movie theater to watch it? No. I'll wait for it to become available on whatever streaming platform. They haven't won me back yet to go to the movie theater. I saw Endgame. That was it. So we're good here.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about all that. We are here to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Shadows and Symbols, second episode of the 7th season. Just a little recap there for you. Would you like me to do the recap, or would you?
I did it last week, I believe. So yeah, I think it's your turn. Go for it.
All right. So yes, the second episode of the 7th season, as we've said now 3 times. This episode, it starts with kind of where the last one left off, where we saw Ezri Dax has introduced herself to the Cisco family, and she is saying that she is the new host of the Dax Symbiont. Basically, we find out what happened to her was that, after Jadzia died, they were transporting the symbiont back to Trill for reimplantation somewhere down the line. But along the way, the Trill symbiont started to take a turn for the worse. She was the only Trill on board, so she got implanted. She's had no training. She was not an initiate. She did not go through the same ritual and whatever else that Jadzia did to prepare herself to be joined. And so now we have this this young, untrained person hosting the Dax Symbiont. And Ben's like, don't care. I'm just glad to see you. But we're heading out. We're going to Tyree. I've got to go to Tyree. So now we see all 3 Ciscos, Joseph, Jake, and Ben, and now Ezri on board the shuttle, heading out to this desert planet Tyree that we've never heard of or seen before. But here we go. Meanwhile, this is going on. Worf, O'Brien, and Bashir, and Quark have embarked on a mission to ensure Jadzia Dax's entry into Sto-vo-kor. They are going to take a bird of prey, fly it into this alien system where the combined Cardassian Dominion fleet yards, where they're building all their ships, is located. They're going to set off a chain reaction in the sun of the system where the fleet yards are, and cause a mass ejection of star material that will obliterate everything in the immediate area of the system, effectively destroying the Dominion's ability to create new ships. It's a dangerous mission. They've got to fly incredibly close to the sun to do it. As Worf describes it, the ship will basically look like a comet streaking across the heavens as they set the fleet yards ablaze. We heard in the last episode how O'Brien and Bashir had agreed to do this thing in honor of Jadzia's memory, and now we see in this episode that Quark has joined as well. They do their little initiate ceremony, whatever, to get the mission started, and then they take off. While that's going on, we also have a third story. This is where Kira and Odo are up against Senator Kretak and Admiral Ross, because, as we found out in the last episode, the Romulans have taken over the Bajoran moon of Derna, and they had set up a military hospital there for their soldiers, but then they put some weapon emplacements on the hospital as well. When the Bajoran people found out about that, they were like, got to get the weapons out. To which Senator Kretak said, nah, we're going to keep them. And so Kara was like, look, we're going to put up a blockade. You're not going to get any more troops or supplies or anything else. And any ship that fires upon our ships, it'll be considered an act of war, and we're going to fight you. Right. Ross tries to play middleman on this, and he's like, I can't tell Kretak no, but I can't, like, it is a Bajoran moon, so I can't really tell you no either. So I don't really have a say in this.
All I can do is send formal complaints. Yeah.
Right, which we've done. And really, I'm hoping, Kira, that you will back down, because we really need the Romulans in this fight. We don't want to lose this new ally when it's so crucial right now with the Dominion. Kira's like, yeah, no, you can kick rocks with that. I said, get those weapons off my moon, and you're going to get those weapons off my moon. That's pretty much how Kira rolls. Right. So she gathers up a bunch of ships, little, fighters that the Bajorans had, and forms her blockade, effectively blocking the Romulan ships. And we see them coming at each other, and it's like, who's gonna blink first? Back to Sisko and family. They arrive at Tyree. It's a desert planet. They dress in the desert fatigues, which would make awesome pajamas, by the way.
I was going to say, they look more like pajamas than
fatigues. They look really comfortable. Like, I'm not kidding. It's just this light heather gray with the, uniform colors for Sisko and Ezri. And they just seemed really light, really comfortable. I was like, man, long robe, all that, nice hoodie. Look, I'd wear that. I'd definitely wear that,
Right.
And Sisko just kind of takes off through the desert. And man is setting a breakneck pace and doesn't care if anybody keeps up with him or not. Ezri is doing the best at keeping up with him. Jake probably could have done the same, but he's staying back to help out his aging grandfather here, who is struggling. And, I always wondered, like, why Joseph Sisko even agreed to go. And it dawned on me later on that it's most likely because he felt conflicted about his son and the whole Sarah thing and her, what her,
Yeah, he does say, I owe Ben.
Yeah. At one point. Yeah. So there's that. So then, while they're marching and all this stuff, Ben starts to hear, he started in the runabout, but he starts hearing this voice. They're calling for a doctor, like over an intercom. Mm-hmm. And then he finally gets to a point where he's in the desert. It becomes manifest. He's having this vision where he is no longer Ben Sisko. He is Benny Russell, and he's been committed to a medical sanitarium. Yeah. And basically, this is the character that we saw in Far Beyond the Stars, who was a writer who wrote, sci-fi stories for a newspaper that we later saw the first story never really got published. And so now it's basically continuing that storyline there of Benny Russell has become obsessed with the story of Ben Sisko and Deep Space Nine and all the goings on there. And we see he's been committed and he's been writing the stories on the wall of his room, his cell, whatever. And there's a doctor in there, human doctor, who sounds suspiciously like Damar, telling him that if he wants to free himself and get out, he's got to paint over it, get rid of it. And, he battles it out a little bit. in the
Well,
real
the real
world,
world, Cisco is
yeah,
carrying the orb.
Cisco is digging for a while, and he finds the orb. He uncovers the orb, and right before he opens it, again, we're back into Benny Russell's world, and we need Benny Russell to write that Cisco opens the orb. Otherwise, nothing happens. And so, again, at Dr. Wyckoff, aka Human Damar, urging, is he going to paint over it? Is he not? And we see Cisco now reburying the orb that he had just found. But at the last minute, Benny Russell fights off those Dr. Demons, knocks him down, picks up his pencil, and writes that Cisco opens it. Cisco does. He frees the spirit that's trapped inside. The spirit makes its way to the Celestial Temple, i.e., the wormhole, and we see the wormhole burst open, and a big line of flame is shot out, which we're to interpret as the Pa-Wraith that got in there when Dukat did his thing when he killed Jadzia. Worf, Worf, O'Brien, and Bashir and Quark make it to this planetary system. They try to trigger the mass ejection, but their first pass of it doesn't work. They realize they've got to get a whole lot closer and intensify the beam in order to make it happen. So they do that, but in the process, 3 Jem'Hadar ships show up and start to attack them. They're able to stay ahead of the attack just long enough to finally trigger the ejection, which not only destroys the ships that were chasing them, but all the ships in the fleet yard, and they escape just in the nick of time. So that wraps them up. Worf says his little prayer of goodbye and everything to Jadzia, now fully satisfied that she has earned her spot into Sto-vo-kor, which is Klingon heaven, and he's satisfied. And they go home. Back on the station, Kira reaches the ultimate moment there with the senator, and she refuses to back down. They find out that the wormhole is back, but Kira is committed. And finally, at the last minute, Ross convinces the Senator Kretak to stand down. And the senator turns her ships around and leaves, to which Ross congratulates Kira because he basically believed that Kira was not going to stand down and do this thing. So that ends their stalemate. Kira wins. Everybody returns to the station, including Cisco, whom everybody is really happy to see. And then, trailing behind Cisco here is this person who is like, hey, Odo, O'Brien, Kira, it's so nice to see all of you again. They're like, who the hell is this chick? And they're like, oh, it's me, Dax. And they're like, what? And then Jake fills them in that, who she is and all that kind of stuff. And Worf's like, it's not her. And just turns around and walks out.
Yeah.
And they're done. That's it. So we can clearly see that Worf is going to be very upset by the developments of Ezri here.
Yeah.
So that's how the episode essentially ends. Those are the high points. Of course, if you want, you can go back, watch the episode yourself, and pick up on all the little bits that we're getting ready to discuss, of course. But that's it. So, as always, I love to start with the very first question of David, Mr. First-Time Viewer. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, this episode had a lot of tension going. You had these 3 storylines going along, and all 3 of them have some pretty high stakes. You have Kira playing chicken with the senator from Romulus, and you have the Worf and crew trying to get this sun to explode in just the right way. And then, of course, you have Cisco and family trying to find this orb. I did feel finding the orb was a bit of a MacGuffin quest. We got to find the thing. He finds it, and it immediately solves some problems. He just opens it up, and it shoots a beam of light. I guess the one thing we didn't talk about in your recap is that the orb explains Cisco's history, who his mother is.
We get to all that, which we were going to talk about in our later greater breakdown.
All right, so we'll wait for that for a moment. Yeah. So yeah, I like the fact that this episode was like, yep, all of our people have something to do, and they're all it's high tension, it's high stakes. We got a lot of things going on. Quark joining Worf and company on a mission is a little bit forced. It was basically, it felt kind of like, hey, Armin Shimmerman plays Quark and he has to be in every episode. And we're not on the station much at all. So this is how he gets to be on the ship. However, that does lead to an interesting. I mean, he confronts Worf with like, "You should be grateful that we want to be on the ship with you, and
Mhm.
you owe us a thank you." And Worf is like, "I owe you a thank you. You owe me a thank you for letting you come, come
I would
along."
have. Okay, so that scene, I loved and hated that scene
Yeah,
because I felt like to a certain degree, Quark was right. Before Worf came on to Deep Space Nine, Jadzia had a relationship with all of them, and we knew that at least Bashir was very much into her.
right.
You know, so there's that. So I like that Worf, or not Worf, but that Quark stood up to Worf to be like, hey, she was our friend and we miss her and we loved her and we have every right to do this, because to a certain degree, he's right. They
Right.
do.
Right.
But I would have loved it. Like when Worf gave his speech about how they were unworthy of her, I would have loved it if he had thrown in some things in there about like, you weren't just her friends. You were people who like lusted after her and chased
Mhm.
after her. And it's not your love of your friend that you miss that brought you here. It's your feeling that you were somehow deserving of a
Of physical.
romantic
Yeah.
something
Mm,
that's brought you here. Like,
right.
make the distinction and be
Right.
like, if it wasn't for the fact that Jadzia had placated him on certain things, I just really wish that Worf would have said, it's because of my love for Jadzia. I love her so intensely
Right.
that if it wasn't for that love, I would kill you right now. And because your presence is insulting. Because again, you're not here because you were her best friend. You're here because you thought it should have been you instead of me.
Right.
So you're insulting me by being here, and I'm allowing it.
Right.
That's what I wanted.
Right.
Something like that, an acknowledgement of, because it to me it was blatantly disrespectful. Like you might have, O'Brien definitely gets away with it because he's married. He
Yeah.
never made any kind of romantic overtures toward Jadzia at all. They were
He's
only
only
ever
there to keep
friends.
an eye on
Right.
Bashir. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other two, not at all. Like y'all, you made plays for, you didn't win her. You
Right.
didn't win her.
Right.
And then even when we got married and and all that, y'all were still sitting there being like, I can't believe she's marrying
Yeah.
that
Just
guy.
waiting for Worf to
And like,
fall
yeah,
away.
like
Yeah.
eventually Worf will screw up and she'll be back on the market, and that's when I'll have my chance. Like, that's the kind of guys that you all were. Like, you weren't good guys at all. You were betting on their marriage to fail. And then when, like before it even happened, like before she died and everything, when they found out that she was planning on having a kid with Worf, they were like devastated.
Yeah.
Not, they were like, well, just like, not because it's potentially dangerous, and there's a health concern, but because it's like, oh, that means she really loves him and wants to stay with him.
Right.
And that means we're never going to have a child. Like, that's what they said.
Yeah.
Oh, that means their marriage is going to last. Like, no, they're awful. They're awful, awful people.
Yeah.
And
True.
yeah, I wish that like Worf had just been like, because they try to treat Worf like he's just dumb and
I
doesn't know
know
these
they
things.
do it again to Worf.
Right. And I'm just like, I wish that Worf would just like step up and be like, I'm not an idiot. I know all of this stuff that was going on. You're both disgusting.
Right.
But Jadzia liked you. Like, in spite of all of it, Jadzia liked you. And that's why you're here.
Right.
Not because you liked her, but because she liked you enough to call you her friend. And I'm telling you right now, it's only out of my love for her and honoring that friendship that I don't kill you right here on the ship. Like, I would have loved that moment.
Yeah.
If Worf had that, man.
Well, of course. Okay, so I have a lot of things to say here too.
Yeah.
But first off, let's start with the irony of Quark, of all people, saying you should thank me for being here. He was utterly useless on this mission. He accomplished nothing. He was not a help. even Bashir and O'Brien at least were monitoring some stations. Like Quark was useless. You're totally right about Bashir and Quark both being a bunch of little disgusting pieces of crap when it comes
Yeah.
to Jadzia. But I have to say, they did it to Worf again. That Worf had a strong emotional reaction to something, and the show decided to slap him down in the next part by making him apologize. And I just think like I'm not Native American, but let's say just to come up with a comparison, if there was some sort of Native American friend of mine and he wanted to go off because of some loved one and do some sort of Native American ritual, something or other. I'm not even going to describe what. You get my point. And then I invite myself along and have the audacity to be like, you should appreciate my presence. Like, no. I invited myself along. That's not how that works.
Right. I'm the stranger here. I'm intruding upon your culture's practices and rituals.
Exactly.
I will sit here and shut up while you do whatever it is you need to do. I'm just here in as much of a capacity as to support you and honor my friend as possible without being intrusive, because I don't know what this entails. I don't know. And even then, like the whole time that when Quark is on there, he's complaining about everything. Why, the first thing he says, why does everything with Klingons involve so much blood? And and then they've got to, they cut themselves with the blades, and he's crying about that and everything else. It's like, why would you come to this? Why would you be here? You know that our culture is this way already. Why would you intentionally put yourself into this?
Right. Yeah, and then on top of that, you have Worf has a nice speech where he says like, I didn't want to share Jadzia. I had to share her with you. And it's kind of an interesting point of like are you allowed to grieve privately, especially for a loved one, like a marriage partner, a wife or a husband? I feel like on some level you're allowed a certain level of privacy. You did have. I mean, let me put it this way: Jadzia wasn't sharing her bed with the others. Does Worf get to share his grief in the same way? I mean, no. I get it where he's like, I want to be private, but I feel like it's once again the show taking Worf. Not only is he a physical punching bag for the show, but he's an emotional punching bag for the show.
Yeah, and it's like, and they use him in such a way that they, it's constantly calling his practices into question in a way that we would never do for someone else. Like regardless of what you want to say about someone else's religion or whatever, we typically I'd like to say that we typically respect that people practice and worship and believe differently than we might, right? And so, like, for example, this whole thing, the whole ritual here that Worf is doing is to ensure Jadzia's place in Sto-vo-kor, the Klingon word for heaven. So whether you believe that their heaven is, Klingons running around with batleths and slashing people or whatever it is, or if it's just another word, another allegory, and heaven is heaven, period. They just call it Sto-vo-kor in this case. They say, well, why would Jadzia want to even be in Sto-vo-kor? They're married. Worf and Jadzia are married. They share a certain connection. And Jadzia, by marrying Worf, and especially since we saw the way their marriage plays out, we know that she has accepted Klingon rituals, traditions, and values.
Yes.
So for them to imply at all that she wouldn't want this is antithetical to what we know that Jadzia would want, because she has demonstrated already that she has accepted a Klingon lifestyle.
Right.
So again, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And the only person in this who besides O'Brien, who I also give a little bit of a pass to, is Bashir. Because while I don't like the reason that Bashir is there, because he too was lusting after Jadzia, he never steps forward and is in Worf's face about anything. Yeah. He tries his best to just be like, I'm just here to honor my friend. I don't have any say in any of this. I know that I don't have any say in this, but I feel like I need to be here to represent at least that part of our friendship.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and he gets pissed because Quark is messing that up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Like Bashir is both and. He's both the creep who was doing everything about, yeah, they're having a kid together, to, well, I want to honor her. And Worf is the one who gets to choose how that plays out. By this
Right.
is the
He
ritual we're going
accepts.
with.
He
Yeah.
accepts, like, I want to honor her, but Worf was her husband. So whatever it is he says goes.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, and it's just, again, Quark, of all the people who would say you should be happy I'm here, it's like you're the bottom of the list, bro.
Right.
Barrel, bottom of the barrel.
I just wanted to see him, Worf just lift him up and be like, I'm not, like, I want to stab you. Like, I want to kill you right now. And the only thing that's keeping me from doing that is
We're on a mission.
my love for Jadzia. That's it. That's the only thing that's keeping me from killing you right now.
And actually, I love the idea that this mission is we gotta get this sun to give off some of its star material and blow up these space docks. It's actually a brilliant idea. Like,
right? A stroke of genius.
Yeah, brilliant plotting there. It's only one ship who has to do it, so they don't have to do a whole bunch of weird, space battle stuff. It's typically kind of standard space battle. They have 3 ships chasing 1 ship, but then you get to see the docks blowing up, and it looks great. You feel like a powerful move was taking place, but it didn't have to be a huge battle, multi-ship, end of season type fight. It was a little one ship go in there and risk itself in a risky maneuver, and yeah, I like that. It was a good plan.
I'm gonna have to look it up just to see who did it first. But a similar plot was used in an episode of Stargate SG-1 where Samantha Carter was going to blow up a sun in order to eliminate Anubis's fleet. It sort of works, but she also ends up destroying like that entire solar system to do it. It's not just a mass ejection of some stellar material. Right. She destroys the whole planet, or the star and the planetary system, as well as a good chunk of the fleet. But I need to figure out who did that first. Did Deep Space Nine or them? Because these shows would have been on around the same time. This is like the golden age of sci-fi. So many great sci-fi shows were on during this run. So
right.
Yeah, definitely to figure that out. But yeah, I love that. I love that it's like a great way to have a devastating blow to your enemy. Costs you very little because, like you said, only 1 ship was needed to execute this mission. Also, it gives them plausible deniability if you carry it out right? Because they were cloaked coming in and had the first pass on the sun worked, the planets, or not the planets, but the ships would have been destroyed, and no one would have been any wiser. But it's because they had to do it twice that the other ships were able to pick them up and come after them and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely love to see more of that, see more underhanded, duplicitous stuff where they use natural environments to destroy their enemy and their ships and stuff like that. So
yeah.
Now, before we turn to our main storyline, we have to quickly here talk about Kira and her standoff with Senator Kretak. We don't really give the Romulans a whole lot of credit here for having, well, not here, but it's in general, for having a bit of a backbone. But Kretak was rather ruthless in her, I'm not backing down, Kira's gonna have to.
Yeah, she's bluffing. I have to say, of all the plot lines, it was a good one, but it was also the one that was the most predictable in some ways because like we can't let Kira lose, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's after the fact I'm being cynical about it, but I guess there's just a part of me that was always like, Kira has to win this confrontation, so the stakes are not as high because I don't feel them actually being as high as the episode wants them to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get it. I mean, the whole point is that Kira is willing to stand up, and even like as you said during your recap, the wormhole reopens, and she doesn't let that distract her from her mission.
Not at all. You thought that it was going to because you hear the wormholes open. You see the effect it has on her, that the wormhole has returned. And then she contacts the ships. And you think she's getting ready to tell the ships to stand down. And
Yeah,
she's
that's
like,
true.
nah, lock targets. We're
Yeah.
doing this. It's almost like it emboldens her to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Maybe I was a little more interested in the plot than I'm saying here afterward. But
I think what's interesting about it is the fact that it's Ross that makes Kretak blink.
back down. Yeah. He says, "You convinced me," and I said to her that if you blow up her ship, she'll have to stand up to mine next time. And that's actually great. It's a great point. That's exactly what Kira needed, was someone to back her play.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to convince not Senator Kretak to back down, but Admiral Ross to step up.
Exactly. That's what it was. She was convincing Ross to step up.
I am a worthy partner to you. I won't back down in the face of risk and danger. Yes, the Romulans might be the bigger partner in many ways, but that was her complaint. It was like, oh, you need the Romulans more than you need us, don't you? But she proved to him that she had the gumption and the character to be a worthy ally. So yeah, Kira does her job, and Odo gets to be there and witness it with her. He's the one who's kind of by her side, and even says, "Hey, if you're gonna back down, now's the time." So he's kind of that devil on her shoulder a little bit, telling her maybe this is the time to back down. But he never pushes the point. He never forces her. He doesn't complain or lose his cool. He just points out like this is it. If you want to stop, this is where we stop. But she goes forward. So what I like about this episode is you have these three plot lines of different types of confrontation and climax building. You have Sisko trying to find something. You have Worf trying to accomplish something, and you have Kira trying to stop something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all three different types of doing something, but all climax at the same time.
I like that. It's one of the few times I'll say this. I like that we don't see Kretak capitulate. We hear about it from Ross, but we don't see it. Right. And I think that that's cool because it allows Kretak to come back later on, and she has technically lost nothing because we didn't watch her crumble on screen. We didn't watch her break, you know. So the next time we see her, she can still be just as strong and implacable as she's been, as we've seen her up to this point. So I like that a little bit too, because it gives them something a little bit more to play with the Kretak character. I like Kretak as a weird kind of foil for Kira. I would like to see that continue more, like as the rest of the war develops and things happen, like that these two form a weird kind of friendship where it's like they don't acknowledge that they're friends, but like they keep doing things to help each other a little bit here and there. I think that would be a cool way to play that out. It's kind of like a mutual respect for a not quite enemy, I guess. They keep each other at arm's length because they both know,
what they're
in theory anyway, how far they're willing to go. Right.
You're talking about Kira and the Senator, the two of them.
Yes, the two of them.
It's interesting you say that because in the last episode, when the Senator came on station, Kira was starting to like her. Like she was being charmed by her, and it's kind of too bad that the Senator breaks that trust with this. We're gonna put our weapons here, whether you like it or not. It's funny because it's like if the Senator had played that charm offensive maybe a little bit longer, had done a little bit more with it, she could have maybe gotten away with the weapon in placement. She could have said, "Hey, we have an opportunity to set up some weapon arrays here on the moon for you, lovely Bajorans." but she
We're
failed
gonna
to do it.
set them up, but then you can have them when we leave. Okay.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. We'll
that
never
sounds
leave,
great.
but
Right. When you leave in 30 years, they'll still be good. They'll still be
yeah,
good.
yeah,
You know, yeah, that definitely could have played out there, but they didn't um, uh, do well. They didn't do it in this episode. So
yeah,
I think I would just like to see more of Kreetak in general. I don't know, something about her, about that character I really like. And considering that
yes.
she's playing kind of this, antagonist character,
Mhm.
she still struck me as a very strong presence. So I could definitely watch more of her.
Right.
But now, last and not least, we have to turn our attention to Benjamin Sisko, the man, the myth, the legend, the god, apparently, or
uh,
half god, demigod.
yeah, demigod,
Yeah, he'd be
man of
a
destiny for
demigod
sure.
for sure. So in this, we see that Sarah, the woman in the picture from the last episode, who is his actual mother, we find out she was inhabited by a prophet, and the prophet used her to meet with young Joseph Sisko to impregnate Sarah and deliver Ben. And
Yeah,
so, a year after Ben was born, the prophet departed from Sarah, and Sarah up and left.
yeah,
So, as Ben points out in the episode, Sarah did not choose Joseph Sisko, the prophet did.
yeah.
The prophet arranged all of this.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on that? What on demigod Ben Sisko?
Well, I'll first say that this is basically kind of an inversion of the plot of the Terminator, where we went back in time not to kill the mother, but to impregnate the mother, which is actually the plot of Terminator.
I
uh,
I I have to say, like, I'm really torn on it. Um, I don't I don't like that it elevates Ben to this weird kind of status that no other captain has
yeah,
ever had,
yeah,
that we've ever seen. I always like the fact that the way that the captains struggled with their particular issues of their respective shows was very much a realistic, human way. It gave you
right,
something to relate to.
right.
But to find out that Ben's entire existence was basically preordained,
Yes,
and that he's got this otherworldly connection, it
yes,
doesn't it almost diminishes everything that he did. It's
yeah,
like, did you do it because you truly were a hardworking officer, or was it the godly part of you that meant that you were never going to fail?
right.
Whether
And
you knew that it existed or not.
I want to say I come down on the yes, he is human, and yes, he did the things as a human would. This is it's a time travel story in the sense of we needed the man who was going to do the job here to do it, so we're going to make him there. We're not imbuing him with special powers. He is
We're just
already him.
creating the man.
We're just putting him in the position to do what we need him to do. He isn't like, again, he's not imbued with special powers from on high. He is himself the man for the job. We just need to get him in the job. And because the real prophets are not linear, as they say multiple times, they are from outside linear time. They can therefore foresee things that are going to happen, and then also make decisions that affect time, which is interesting because then it becomes a question of, well, if you knew what was going to happen, how does you changing things, like, how much are you making things happen because you chose them, or fulfilling things that you've already foreseen? It's the question of time travel and foreknowledge that every anyone who asks these questions will ask.
Hmm.
But the real question, of course, is what do we do about the fact that Sarah was effectively used by the prophets for their own ends? We can argue that for the sake of the galaxy, it was necessary for her to be used in this way, but it means that the person that is Sarah is utterly meaningless. Like, we know learned a thing about her, about the woman she was before she gave birth to Ben, who she was after. She is utterly meaningless, and I feel like that's the biggest, the
And with the
saddest thing.
way and with the way that we know that the prophets can manipulate time and memory and so forth, who's to say that Sarah didn't wake up in the middle of the night and had no idea that any of that had happened? She
Right.
woke up and she was laying
It's
in bed
literally
next
been
to
like,
a strange man.
yeah,
As far as she's concerned, the last thing she did was leave her house one Tuesday morning to go pick up flowers. And now it's a
2
year
years
later,
later. Yeah.
2 years later, she's next to this dude. She knows nothing of a child
Right.
asleep in the next room, and she
Right.
just quietly gets up, packs a bag, and leaves. Doesn't say anything, doesn't do anything.
But
Or
that's what
heck,
it
as
sounds
far
like.
as we
Yeah.
know, we know, she didn't even wake up next to Ben. It could have been that the prophet controlled her all the way, right? And
Right.
so at a pre-appointed time, the prophet said, "All right, I'm done here. Ben has been delivered. He's healthy. He's safe. I know that Joseph will take care of him." Gets up, takes off. And when Sarah awakens, she's in a building somewhere in Australia. And everybody's like, it's been a year, you know?
Right.
And she's just picking up her life. No
Yeah.
one knows where she's been. No one has any reason to track a family member or anything like that because she doesn't remember any of it. And
Right.
then Joseph, when he finally goes to track her down, she had already died.
Right. Yeah.
So there's
That's
no reason to think that she left knowing at least that she had been with this man at all.
right. So I do feel like the choice that the show has made to make Sarah basically her womb was useful for a purpose, and everything else about her is wiped away. It's a brutal choice to make for a character who, I mean, she's on screen for a little bit. At least the actress playing the prophet, who's used the body for that purpose. But yeah, I like Worf. I mean, sorry, Cisco doesn't ask any questions about Sarah. He doesn't say who was she. Was she happy with these choices? He does say though that she never chose. Like he knows the horror that she experienced.
Yeah.
Makes you kind of question the prophets a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. But are we sure that Cisco wasn't imbued with even a smidgen of cosmic ability? I mean, the man punched Q.
Yes. All right, you're proving your point.
There's gotta be something special about a
No
man
one,
who can
Picard
land
never punched me. Yeah.
I'm not Picard. You're right. You're a demigod from another dimension, and you get back there right now because I can't have people punching me over here on this side of the fence.
Can you imagine Q coming back at this point and being like, "Ha! I figured it out. You're part demigod. You need to go back where you came from."
No one told me that I was fighting a prophet. All right, part prophet or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Vincent, I think in the first Terminator movie, I don't think it's clear that John Connor knew that, but by other movies certainly imply that, yeah, John Connor knew by sending his dad back. He was basically fulfilling his own destiny. He knew who his father was. I can't remember that character's name at the moment. But anyway, yeah, I think that's implied in later films. But yeah, anyway, going back to the episode here, I like it. I like the idea that I like time travel as a concept. I just always want it to be done very consistently. I want it to be done very thoughtfully. So I like the idea because, again, I just to be clear, I don't think Cisco is imbued with any sort of prophet, blah blah blah.
Just his fist.
Just his fists. He, the man who makes decisions, is the right man for the moment. And the prophets are mysterious in that they operate outside of time as we know it. And that's what happened here. Again, there was something horrible about what they did. And, it's interesting, too. Like, why is this orb on this other planet? Does that mean, like, how did it get there? We see it pop, it goes back to the wormhole and, like, turns the wormhole back on. But I don't know. It's just curious. Like again,
Well,
that's why I
this is one
felt it
of
was a
those.
bit of a MacGuffin hunt.
Well, I was going to say this kind of goes back to what you said there earlier, but it also relates to how little we know about these orbs. And when the show first starts, Kaiopaka tells us that there are 9 other orbs. She
Mm,
has one that she gives to Cisco, and then
right.
she says there are 9 orbs like this one. So she says 9 orbs like this one have appeared in and around Bajoran space for centuries.
Right.
They each have a different property. They've had a couple. The Cardassians took a few more. We don't know how many the Cardassians actually had or still have. We
Yep.
don't know if there's more of them that are going to turn up, later on in the show. All we do know is that this one was special as it related directly to the emissary and the emissary's life. Um, but yeah, I mean, we don't, there's not enough here to tell us anything. And that's one of the things about the show that I also feel like was a mistake by making there be so many of them that they never got around to all of them. Why did you need to make 10 or 12 orbs? Why couldn't you have kept it at 5,
Hmm.
and then just use the 5 and whatever, because we get a lot from the ones that we have, and I think we see like 3 or 4 on the show. So yeah, there was no reason to go through that and leave this very open-ended thing out there. And to this day, it's that way. Even when you look at other like canon, beta canon source materials, Star Trek Online, and so forth, they don't go into any greater detail about the number of orbs and what they do and where they've been found or any of that. It would be a great narrative for them to pick up on in later shows,
Yeah.
but yeah, nothing's been done with that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I think that we have, we've covered just about everything. I do like really quick. I guess we have to talk about uh, the voices that Ben's hearing, and we're seeing Benny Russell confined to a sanitarium, and this Dr. Wyckoff is trying to treat him, who
Right.
sounds suspiciously like Damar, who is
Yeah.
also featured in this episode. We don't see him much,
Oh,
but
that's
he
right.
is in this
Yeah.
episode. So we almost had a D plot here in this one. I
Oh,
guess
it's
they
true.
felt like, we
Actually,
had enough with an A, B, and C.
yeah. We briefly have Wei Yun complain to Damar about something. He says, well, Damar is, of course, partaking of alcohol. What is it they drink?
Kanar.
Kanar. But he's got a lady friend now in the mission room. Part of me, again, every time I see a character that I don't know why they're there, part of me wonders if it's going to be a changeling. But again, they haven't overdone any sort of changeling shenanigans, so didn't happen this time either. Just a lady friend. And Wei Yun just gives him a hard time, says something about I have something to show you. You need to get rid of her. But was there anything else about that scene? I don't remember anything else coming of that.
It was no, I mean, it was something about trying to break through the enemy's lines, but they don't really go into any greater detail there. So it didn't
Right. It
seem like there
was.
was anything necessarily important. I would
It was.
imagine that the next episode, we're going to hear the fallout from the destruction of their fleet yard.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think the only reason I can think of why they would have Damar here is to make it so it's clear, like if you were thinking about it, that Damar is the same is played by the same actor who was playing Dr. Wyckoff, because you could tell the
Casey
voice.
Biggs.
Yep. Casey Bix is that voice stands out, but you can make out his face, and it was fun to see all the actors play different characters in that flashback episode. What was it called again? That the Benny
Far
one?
Beyond the Stars.
Far Beyond the Stars. So yeah, it was fun to see like Wei Yun and Gul Dukat. They're actually two corrupt detectives that beat him up and stuff like that. Just it was fun to see characters in different roles. So yeah, it was fun to see him as this doctor telling him to be free of your story, which is like that's his life. He was a storyteller before he was in here. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I was surprised that the Benny character didn't make more of a pushback. Like, this is what I do. This is
I
how I
mean,
make a living. What are you
he
talking about?
does, but he's also supposed to be losing his grip on reality here.
Yeah, true.
And then he eventually is just like, nah, screw it, and knocks the doctor out and the orderly,
Yeah,
and writes what he needs to write. So
yeah.
he can say what it is. Ben in any dimension gets it done.
Ah,
Well, I think that will do it for us here on this particular episode. No new Trek news at this time. I know that, like I said, the Section 31 movie is done. If you want to watch any episode of anything Trek, it is all available now on Paramount Plus, except for Prodigy, of course. Other than that, guys, we're going to keep moving along. I am going to try to focus and get through Tiamat's Wrath so that we can do our recap, breakdown, whatever, our After Dark special on The Expanse. We may bring back some kind of contest. This one will be Expanse oriented. Maybe throw in a few last minute, last days contests as we round out season 7 of our show, and we don't know where we're going to go next with our show. Who knows? All these books that we're reading here, Federalist Papers, Enchiridion, and so forth and so on. Maybe we'll turn this into a philosophy podcast. Well, that should send people just hurtling to the streams, right?
yeah.
But all right, guys, that's going to do it for us here on this episode. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to level them at us over on our Facebook page, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. But until then, take care of yourselves.